Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Alan Onsman, senior editor and author of the Current Climate newsletter. Alan, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Brittany. Good to be with you today.
Good to be with you. You have news of a staff shakeup at Tesla. Elon Musk has fired his head of operations in North America and Europe. This is someone who has been with the company since 2017. He started off as an engineer. What can you tell us about the news?
Well, it is a big deal because Tesla, relative to other large companies of its size, runs pretty light. There's not a large group of executives at this company. So removing someone like this who was in charge of two of the world's three biggest regions for the company is a very big deal. The guy forced out was named Omid Afshar. He's been with the company, as you said, since 2017. He's become a real sort of confidant for Musk and has worked very closely with him for the last few years, reporting to him directly, certainly for the last 5 or 6. He was very instrumental in construction of the Texas Gigafactory, which was a big deal for the company and is now also its base of operations. He did, for a time, he was sort of eased out a few years ago out of Tesla over an issue related to purchases of glass it was a very confusing kind of situation. And he spent time at SpaceX, but then he rotated back into Tesla about a year or so ago and then was elevated to this position last October, where he was put in charge, as you mentioned, of North America and Europe. And so that's a big deal because the only other region that he wasn't looking at would have been China, of course, and Asia. But those are some of the biggest parts of Tesla's world. And things aren't going that well in either of those markets. In fact, in any market for Tesla right now.
I want to ask just how surprised are you by this news? Because we know over the weekend, Tesla launched their robo-taxis in Austin, and he tweeted about it. He said it was an absolutely historic day for Tesla. So based on that alone, I mean, that's not really an indication that you're going to get fired just a few days later. I mean, how shocking is the move?
It is quite surprising, and the timing is unusual. As you say, there are two factors. Number one, the robotaxi launch on Sunday was a big deal, a lot of attention paid to that, and the second quarter is about to close. So we're in the last week of June. Pushing out the person overseeing, with a major management role for the company days before the close of the quarter, well, the signal to the markets is probably not the best. The expectation is, sales are going to be down. EV sales are going to be down everywhere. They've certainly been down consistently in Europe for several months now, but they're down in China. They're down in the United States. So perhaps what it also is a demonstration of Musk's frustration or disappointment with the core business and how things are moving there. And the problem is they're moving in the wrong direction.
You pointed this out in your report that Omid Afshar was in 2024, in November 2024, the Wall Street Journal called him Musk's fixer, and they said that he was the powerful executive reshaping Tesla. That was just about 7 months ago. So what has happened? What has transpired in the last 7 months for him to go from fixer to out of a job?
Well, they've gone the wrong way. To put it mildly, things have not been fixed. On the product side, we've written and talked about this, but Cybertruck has been the only new product for Tesla recently. Sales have not been great for that. They're a fraction of what Musk had anticipated. And the cupboard is kind of bare on new products. They did a major refresh of the Model Y this year, and the hope was that will really boost sales for that product. It's Tesla's top seller around the world. There's little evidence so far that it's made much difference. They have a lot of unsold inventory. Sales are slowing in every key market. So that's certainly not going well. The other issue is some of Tesla's problems have nothing to do with Afshar and were not his responsibility. And these are issues that were created by Elon Musk himself. Since last year, his very strong support for Donald Trump and association with Trump and the Trump administration have not been positives for the Tesla brand. His role running Doge for Trump for the first few months of the Trump administration did not reflect well on Musk or the brand. And we've seen that in poll after poll, consumer surveys. There were protests in April and May at Tesla stores, anti-Musk protests. In Afshar's role, well, that's not him. I mean, he's not causing those things. How do you fix that? I have no idea. Well, I do have an idea how you might fix that. And that might be perhaps he was the wrong person to go.
And you and I have talked about that Elon Musk is pretty radioactive and has been for the brand since he was really, after his stint working with President Trump. But there are two other issues Tesla faces, which you and I have talked about, the product issues, whether it be Cybertruck's dismal sales or there's no new exciting product. As you mentioned, there are other viable competitors in the EV space. I mean, how responsible was Afshar in those other two issues?
Well, in part, yes. He would have been the person to advocate for perhaps making sure that they did have some competitive new product in the marketplace. There's been this ongoing issue with something that was called the Tesla Model 2 that had been talked about for a long time. And this was going to be a fairly low-cost EV, maybe $25,000 to $30,000 price range to start. And Musk essentially canceled that last year. In retrospect, that certainly does look like a mistake. When Tesla did its robotaxi preview at Universal Studios last year, or Warner Brothers Studios, rather, excuse me, they showed off this thing called the Tesla Cybercab, this two-door kind of small model. And by all accounts, that was the Model 2. And the curious thing was when you saw it, it's like, well, why don't you just get that on the road? There you go. There's a product that would be affordable, an interesting new thing, and it doesn't have a competitor. There's really no model in the marketplace currently that would be similar, but they didn't do that. Perhaps Afshar should have pushed for something like that more aggressively to make sure they had that. There's no indication that low-price Tesla products are on the way. And at the end of the day, Musk has talked consistently for a year now that Tesla's future is robotaxis, autonomous vehicles, robots, and AI. The problem is, right now, today, none of those things generate revenue for Tesla. They can be very exciting new businesses for the future, but they're not businesses today. So the key thing is, yes, you can pivot to these things at some point, but you need to keep your core business strong. And what we're seeing in Q1 and now Q2 is the core business is not looking strong right now.
I mean, talk about just how weak the core business is looking, because you mentioned how interesting this timing is because we're just days away from the close of Q2. And Tesla sales aren't doing great right now, either in America or Europe. Just how bad are they?
They're bad. Europe, they're down double digits this year, 5 consecutive monthly declines in 2025 through the month of May. So that's every month this year. The U.S. is likely the same. We don't have a close look at the U.S. just yet. They were down about 10% in Q1 in the United States. Q2 is likely to be sharper. And that's for several reasons. There's a belief out there, for example, that federal tax credits are already gone, which is not correct. They still exist, but many consumers think that Trump already got rid of them. So the overall U.S. EV market has cooled considerably. And Tesla is the biggest seller of EVs in the United States. It's now under 50% market share. For the longest time, Tesla was 75 or 80% of all U.S. EV sales. Now it's below 50% and falling. As other companies come to market. But we will see some pretty brutal numbers, it looks like, in Q2. At a minimum, consensus analysts forecast right now for Q2 EV deliveries down at least 10%, and that would be best case scenario. I've seen a couple analysts who have much starker numbers where it's more like 15% or so quarterly decline, which would be astonishing. They just have not seen a fall like that. Tesla, for most of its history, has been a growth company. It's always been expand, expand, expand. In 2024, we saw the first ever year-over-year sales decline, and unfortunately, that looks like it's accelerating. A lot of Tesla fans and investors think that's okay because they're coming with these other new businesses and they're going to pivot, and those will be limitless potential. And I would say maybe, but they're not businesses today in the sense that there is no meaningful revenue from robotaxis, AI, or humanoid robotics. So, go after those things, but make sure you don't ignore your current businesses. And unfortunately, that seems like they're not doing that right now.
And Elon Musk, from what we know of him, doesn't really seem to be a bleeding heart when it comes to firing people. He's no stranger to cutting jobs. As we know, he spearheaded the Doge initiative, and he laid off thousands of Twitter employees once he bought the company a couple of years ago. But does he frequently let people go that are that high up in the company?
Not that often, and by all accounts, this is someone who had been quite close to Musk, that had really sort of done everything to please him, and yet he ended up getting cut. So that may indicate that Musk's patience has worn thin, even with some of his most loyal lieutenants, and it is worrisome. Again, mentioning earlier, Tesla is not really a conventional company relative to other large-scale companies, certainly no other automaker, where the C-suite and the upper executive pool is so thin. There's Elon, there's a CFO, and then there's some vice presidents. And it's very difficult to know who's in charge of what on any given day. And unfortunately, that pool seems to be getting smaller. Omid's departure is not the only big one that happened in June. The head of Tesla's humanoid robotics department left early in the month on June 6th, which is interesting because that's supposed to be another one of these new pillar businesses, robots, the Optimus project. So it's from the outside, I'm not sure any of these developments generate a lot of confidence that things are going to get better in the near term.
I want to talk about that just a little bit. I want to put my my perspective on as an investor. If I'm an investor here and I see sales are down on multiple continents, if I see Elon oust a top confidant, a top lieutenant at the company, if I know that he thinks that robotics and AI are the future of this company, and the head of the humanoid robotics department left earlier this month, I mean, what exactly am I thinking right now? What do these moves mean?
I certainly would be concerned. I think it's fine to be optimistic about the potential that these new business moves could have for Tesla over time. But we haven't seen meaningful proof or a timetable about when they're going to turn into multi-billion or even multi-trillion-dollar businesses, as Musk has claimed. The robotaxi example we talked about the other day is a good one. They were charging a token amount for a tightly controlled pilot project on Sunday, and since then. That's fine, but that really looks more like testing. That does not look like an actual commercial program at this point. So what is its real revenue potential? Well, that's going to depend on how quickly it scales, how soon it's made available in other cities. None of those things are clear from what they've demonstrated thus far. Versus, say, the Waymo example, where they keep adding cities, and Waymo, isn't sharing a lot of its numbers, but we see them steadily going up in terms of 250,000 or 300,000 rides a week, and how many millions of people they've given rides to thus far. So we have a better sense of how that business is scaling. Tesla's not there yet with robotaxi and humanoid robotics. Like, I couldn't begin to tell you when that's really going to be a meaningful business, when that'll show up on the balance sheet. I mean, it's going to be a while, I think. So sure, push those things, develop those things, plan for those businesses, but again, don't neglect where you're actually making your money today: cars, batteries, and charging services. And those really are the areas that need the most attention. And so the removal of a key executive who'd been responsible for those areas in two of the world's three largest regions for Tesla should be of some concern. So I think certainly investors would want to know, is management, is the board making the best moves right now in both the near term and long term for Tesla? And I think it's questionable with some of the things we've seen, that certainly there are concerns. Last month we also looked at pension funds and concerns coming from the state level, where they're very unhappy with what they see as the lack of fiduciary responsibility by Tesla's board. They feel that Tesla's board should be leaning on Musk and his team a little harder to make sure that both the things that people don't like about Tesla go away, but also to stabilize the business and ensure that it's going to be around for the long term.
And I know that you have said that Elon Musk likes to keep a light C-suite, and this news just broke. But is there any murmurings of who his replacement is going to be?
None that I'm aware of so far. No, and it's possible that there were other removals this week. That his Afshar's removal may not be the only one. I just don't have hard confirmation of other names at this time. So there may have been some housekeeping. And if it's a broader move by Musk at this time, well, that certainly could also be a concern because there was a time when I could tell you the top 12 or 20 executives at Tesla. Honestly, I can't do that today because that pool keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. There's been a lot of turnover. I can think of three key people in top roles, and that's about it. And that is very different from other major companies that we cover. Tesla is unique in many ways.
Well, Alan, per usual, I appreciate your updates and reporting. Thanks for joining me, and until next time.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. Always great to be with you.